my dad had an affair when I was in second grade. In the midst of all of this, I was being sexually abused as a little girl. You don't realize that it's not normal because that's all you know. Like, healing is not perfection. Healing is doing better than you did yesterday. And sometimes it's just getting through the day. My husband said, "You have a story to tell. Share your story."
Welcome to 60 Minutes with a Woman. It's a pleasure having you here. Today we have Carmella with us. Carmella, I invited you on 60 Minutes with a Woman after coming across your TikTok profile. I instantly had a feeling that you had a story worth sharing. From our very first conversation, your energy felt so genuine, giving, and whole. It's truly a pleasure having you here, and I want to thank you again for being willing to share your story with us today.
Thank you so much. I was really excited when you reached out. It's exciting to be able to be given a platform to share on. So thank you.
I'm so glad. I never know if it's going to come across as something that people want to be part of, but I'm so glad you decided to be part of the narrative. So thank you again. Tell us more about you. Tell us more about who you are, where did you grow up, and what's your story?
Well, I am in my later 30s. I have kids. Um, I have two kids, and then I'm also a stepmom of three kids. My daughter
Wow.
is almost 15, and then I have a son. He is almost 9 years old. He's special needs, so
Yeah.
he's really on the level like a 3-4 year old. So that it's come with a lot of learning and
Of
a lot of
course. Yeah.
humbling as a parent. But he is just the sweetest little boy ever. I grew up in northern Arizona, uh, in a small town. It's called Prescott, Arizona. It's kind of on the map now. A lot of people have moved here
Yeah.
since COVID. Um, Really, I hated it as a kid just because there was, of course, nothing to do, and you always think somewhere else is better. Um,
Yes.
I grew up with three younger brothers. Uh, I really grew up with two younger brothers. The last one wasn't born until I was just about 18 years old, which is kind of an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely. It's like such an age gap.
Yeah, it was funny because he was born my senior year of high school, and a lot of people thought that he was my son, and I like ran away to have him in the summertime. Um, but yeah, I grew up in a home that would have appeared from the outside very normal. It's funny, people used to call my parents Barbie and Ken. They were both like really beautiful people. Um, and we really did appear to be the perfect, perfect little family.
Yeah.
And what's so funny about that is you really have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. There
That
was
is
a
so
lot
true.
of, it was very tumultuous. My parents had an awful relationship. Um, I was very much put into a role of an adult from a very young age. Um, my mom she had a lot of her own struggles and issues, as did my dad. My dad once told me I was probably like 13, and he used to talk to me about all of their relationship things, as did she. He told me once that he knew he shouldn't have married her the day he married her, which is kind of a big thing as a kid to hear your parent say, which one, looking at it now, I understand that the the role I was put in, my parents should never have put me in. Um, my dad had an affair when I was in second grade, was when my mom found out about it. And so I was raised in a church that was quote unquote Christian. They kind of peg themselves as like more on the Pentecostal level, but they don't make everybody wear jean skirts. You can dress semi-normal. But that church I was raised in was very fear-based. It was very, just to give you an example, like as a kid growing up, every night before bed, I would pray, "Dear Jesus, if I did anything wrong today, please forgive me. So if I die in my sleep, I don't go to hell." And there was this huge, huge fear of the rapture happening. So if your parents were ever late picking you up from school, oh my gosh, it was like you're looking in the sky to see if there's an angel in the sky because maybe the rapture happened and you got left behind because you weren't living the perfect way.
Wow.
And I didn't realize how much that affected me and how much anxiety it caused, which,
Right.
of course, growing up, anxiety really wasn't even a word when we were kids. You just felt this
That's true.
thing that
Yep.
it, you were always stressed out, but you didn't know why. And so I bring that up to tie back to, so when my dad was having an affair, he was sleeping with another woman. My mom had this feeling, and for a year, my dad told her, "The devil's lying to you." So he was making her,
He was using religion to his advantage. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
he was making her feel crazy. And
Wow.
so this woman, he had cut off the affair. I was 7 years old when this was all happening. And this woman started, which this lady actually knew my family. She had met my mom. She started calling our house, and this was in the time of house phones and no caller
Yeah.
ID. And you could block a phone number. So she would call our house over and over and over again. She was harassing us. And finally, my mom said to my dad, I remember the night perfectly,
Yeah.
"Did you have an affair? Who is calling our house?" And he
Yeah.
finally told her that he was. And she lost her entire mind. She already was kind of off, but she lost it. And it was 6 months to a year of just absolutely, I watched her roll around on the floor and bash her head against the walls. And
It's
my dad
terrible.
stand over her with me watching all of this and push my brother into a room so he didn't have to see and trying to protect him. But then my dad
Mm.
screaming at me to call the cops, and he had rage. He had so much, like it, he would get so angry, and she was so, for lack of a better word, crazy. And because they were telling me everything, my mom told me that my dad slept with another woman. She said, "Your dad had sex with Patty in our bed." And I
Oh
was
my
7
God.
years old, and she was telling me these things. And so I felt this, I don't know, responsibility to protect my brother and to try to mediate, because that's the position I was put in. It was awful. It was awful. I actually look at my kids now, and I look at my son, and he's 8, and I think about if he were put, granted he's not the same kid, but to put a little kid through that, and the cops would come, and had we been living in now, they probably would have taken us out of our house.
Yeah.
But because then, especially Prescott, it was a good old boy town. My dad was well known. They just put a Band-Aid on things and say, separate them. And they would stay at our house for a little bit, and they would sit with my brother and I, "Are you guys okay?" And,
Yeah.
you know, one time they were fighting, and my mom was doing the same thing, like flailing around on the floor. And my dad was over her, like holding her down. And he got so mad, he punched right next to her face and he broke his wrist. And I watched all of that. And we were told, you can't tell anybody what happened. So we would go to church, and dad broke his hand at work. They were teaching us to, can't talk about anything.
Yeah.
And so going to school, we weren't allowed to say anything, it was a very, and then they continue, they stayed together, they stayed married. And to try to fix it, they had another baby within a year and a half. And my mom very much, I'm sure that the possibility that my parents hear this is there. They're both still alive. I don't have a relationship with either one of them. Um, I don't think they were bad people. I don't think that my mom meant to do all the things she did. I think she was absolutely incapable of actually being a mom. She had a lot of her own trauma. I do think on a lot of levels, she's a narcissist. She cannot function outside of herself. She's also deaf. So she wears hearing aids and she reads lips. So she cannot hear or understand what you're saying unless she's reading your lips. And I, as a adult, like the insecurity that would breed, she always thinks everybody's talking about her. And it was very, it's sad. It makes me sad. It still makes me sad. But I can look at them and see that they were just very broken people.
Yeah.
Who didn't heal, who were still very much kids themselves. And they had me pretty young. And I don't think they did the best they could. Sometimes people will be like, well, they did the best they could with what they had. I don't think that's true. My mom used to say to me, well, if you think it's bad for you, you have no idea it was way worse for me. And I remember being a kid and putting together, even as a little girl, like, well, why wouldn't you want to make it better for us?
Yeah.
Why are you? It felt weird. It was like this weird thing, like almost like she was punishing us for what she had gone through. And that always felt really bad. And my mom treated my brothers much differently than she treated me. And I didn't understand until later that there was very much a competition, which as mom of a daughter, I want nothing more than my daughter to feel beautiful and to feel loved. And in the midst of all of this, I was being sexually abused as a little girl. And the insecurity that comes with that, and then the insecurity that comes with parents who are so tumultuous and so unsafe. Our house was like, people talk about walking on eggshells. Our house was like walking on glass. You didn't want to do the wrong thing because you didn't know who was going to fly off the handle. You didn't know what was going to happen. And so you lived in this space of just feeling so unsafe, which at the time, it was just the way we lived. It was, you don't realize that it's not normal because that's all you know.
Exactly.
And so I was a very, very insecure kid. Something my husband and I have talked about a lot is he has 2 little girls. And they've had a really like pretty good childhood, and he's such a good dad. And I watch him with them. And there's like been times where we've kind of had like, he's asked me like, why don't you play with them more? And I've told him like, even as a mom, it's been really hard for me to even know how to play with my own kids. Because I don't have the experience of really being a kid. There was so much that I lived with and so much insecurity that I didn't ever, when we got married, his daughters were spinning in their dresses. And it was really beautiful. And I was watching them and I just had this like thought that I never did that. I never felt confident enough or safe enough to just like dance or spin around and just be a kid. That resulted in me being very insecure in my body. And my mom didn't help me with things. I actually took one of my friends' moms actually kind of getting angry at her, like, your daughter needs a bra. She's growing up, and my mom just wouldn't do those things. Like, I had bushy eyebrows, were more on the ethnic side, and so had this crazy curly hair and was just so insecure, and I needed a mom to help me. Jim would talk to me about a period. Like, there's so many things that you would think are just normal, and those things weren't there. And so I was just this shell of a little girl trying to protect my brothers and trying to keep the peace between my parents. And I know that I took on this crazy, I would go in my room at night and I would pray, like, God, what can I do better so they'll like each other, so they'll be happy, so they'll stop yelling, so they'll stop fighting? Not understanding that there's nothing I could have done, but I didn't understand that until a lot later.
My gosh. Carmela, it's like, thank you, first of all, for sharing so much. Um, we haven't spoken like that before. So it's incredible that you're willing to do that now. And once again, I want to thank you for that. I don't think any child, I know any child should, nobody should have to go through that. But it's even worse when it's a child, just because you rely so much on the grown-ups who take care of you, who are supposed to take care of you. You know, you said they did the best they could. Everybody says that, but you don't want to say that. People used to tell me the same thing. Um, your family did the best they could. And I think that the truth is that they didn't know any better. And I always say that, no, they didn't know any better. That's all. They didn't do the best. Um, it's, the thing is, you spoke about the fact that before we were not naming what was wrong with us, with our family. Mental health was not a thing. We were just surviving, going through life, and just, accepting whatever was thrown at us and just move on. I think indeed for every parent who hurt their children, at least in the past, not receiving any help, um, sometimes I wonder what they have been through to be that bad,
Yeah.
that hurtful, that careless with their children. And I know they've been through a lot as well. It's not a reason to repeat the trauma, but somehow, they were just incapable of doing any better once again. So I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned now, and it was the child abuse part. Um, it's something that's very important to me. It's deeply important to me. It's something that I think that has been treated with shame for far too long, and raising awareness is crucial. Basically, we spoke about it as well because I recently also shared a video, right, with Lindsay Lohan. And Lohan, this is how you pronounce it in English. I'm so sorry for my French.
I love your
Um,
French.
and basically, the name is named Georgia Rule, and she is abused by her stepfather. She's going through a crisis with her mother because she's decided to say the truth. Unfortunately, her mother wasn't responsive to it because everything was falling apart for her too. But she dismissed her daughter's feelings and abuse because she just couldn't fathom what that could have happened under her watch, right? And I wanted to say that I'm really glad I shared that because I never know who is going to be impacted by raising awareness overall. And I wanted to ask you, how would you describe your communication with your mother at the time when everything happened?
Um, I honestly can't ever remember a time where my mom was a safe person for me to talk to. And I do believe it's because of kind of what I just said. Like, my mom, I think because I was a girl very much in her own insecurities, saw me as a threat to her. And I think because of her own traumas and her own relationship with her mom, she had no idea how to be a mom to a girl. And so she was never a safe person to talk to. Anytime it's a somebody asked, one of the girls I work with recently asked me if I have any good memories of my mom and I. Like, what did you do with your mom that was fun?
Yeah.
And it it's really sad, but there's I can think of a handful of times where we watched a movie together, and that was probably like the happiest memory I have of her, but it was never us talking about things, or she never talked to me about having a period even. So when I started my period, I didn't know what to do. I hid it from her, which there's like shame things involved there too, because I had been sexually abused. Um, but there was really no real communication with my mom.
So she never knew about it?
I don't know. Uh, I know she knew. So I was sexually abused by a couple of different people. And one of the times that happened, I was around 6 years old, and my dad had had friends over, and one of them was in my room while they were at our house. And they left our house, and he had come in my room and taken me under my bed. And this is in our house while everybody was there. And they left. And after they left, my dad and my mom came in my room, and my dad started screaming at me and asking me what happened. And so one of the things that the way they disciplined was my dad would spank us on our bare butt. And so we would have to bend over whatever was closest. And so he ripped down my pants and he started spanking me and screaming at me. And he wanted me to say what happened. Well, of course, I was scared and I was in trouble. So I was not going to say anything. So my mom stood there though. And she didn't say anything. She didn't say, stop, let's talk to her. Um, so I didn't say anything. But they knew something had happened. That was evident. But instead of asking, like I would, if it was my baby, like, hey, I don't know if something happened. Like, are you okay? And you set up a safe space to talk, and that was not. And he spanked me over and over and over again. And she finally did say, like, I think that's enough. After my butt was bruised and, I was screaming, crying, bent over my bed. I was in first grade. Especially in the church I grew up in, they have a belief that is tied to having a Jezebel spirit. And they believe very much in generational curses. And I can't say that I do think that there's like cycles that we can repeat very easily if we aren't aware and we don't look at things. And my mom has very much been open that she was sexually abused and my grandma was sexually abused. And it goes back as far as I've been told. And I think it's easier to get angry and then just put it away and not actually deal with things, or actually maybe bring shame to your perfect family, or to admit that maybe you fell short in protecting your child, because that feels awful. But what it does for a child, that movie, Georgia Rule, it's actually one of my favorite movies because it's so personal to me. And I think the way we change a cycle is we have to do the hard thing. And I do feel like it is something that is one of the reasons I even started sharing on TikTok, is because I feel like there is this disconnect. And I've had clients that have told me they knew their children were being abused, but they didn't want to destroy their marriage. They didn't want to,
What?
they didn't want everybody to know what happened. They didn't
Yeah.
want to, and it's so devastating and it's so sad because I feel like one of the things that resulted in me having to work through so much is that there was nobody that protected me.
Yeah.
And I feel like if there was just somebody to protect me, if there was somebody that made me believe that I was worth protecting, I think my life probably would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I think when you're a little girl and you get in trouble, or there's so much shame and so much embarrassment, and you feel worthless, and you feel like there's something wrong with you, and you feel like you're not lovable. And in that movie, it's like, as the Lindsay Lohan,
Yeah.
she wants to protect her mom and she wants her to be able to keep living her life. And so she's willing to say, like, no, these things didn't happen, and sacrifice herself, basically. And I love that movie because at the end of it, you see that it wraps around and the mom actually is like, oh my gosh. And she does the right thing. But so many parents don't do the thing. And I understand why. I do. I've had to walk on both sides. And there was somebody very close to me that I knew was being sexually abused. I found out. And I had to very much make a choice on what I was going to do, if I was going to bring it to that person's family's attention, and if they were going to hold that person accountable. And it's a very scary thing. And as a mom, if it's your child, you are looking at completely your life just blowing up. And I understand that, but I do believe it is our job to protect our children. I think it sounds easier to just put a blanket over it or to try to protect your child from that person. But I do believe with all of my heart and soul, you have to hold the predator, the person that's doing, you have to hold them accountable. Yeah, pressing charges is scary and maybe nobody believes you. But what it does for the victim to say, you are worth this, you're worth the hard things, your life has so much value. I really feel like that's how we break those. That's how, because that little girl or that little boy can understand that they are worth so much more.
Yeah.
And they are going to hold a higher standard for themselves. They're not going to allow themselves to continue to be abused. But if we don't do that, what are we teaching them? What are we telling them if we pick up a rug and we brush it under? And that happens so often because it's family members, it's people we know. It's like in the movie, it's her stepdad.
Yeah.
It blows up your whole life.
It does.
But it's either it blows up your whole life because you're doing the right thing, or it blows up this girl's life. And for the remainder of her life, unless there's just, I think, divine intervention, she's going to believe she is worthless. She's going to believe that she's good for one thing. She's not going to be able to breathe. She's going to
Make the wrong choices her whole life.
and it also comes with a ton of, like mental health things. Like I do believe, I don't necessarily think that we are always born with depression or OCD or ADHD or any of those PTSD. We're not born with those things. I think a lot of the time those things are trauma induced. But if we were to deal with the trauma when it happens and we were actually like teaching our children, you're worth so much more, and help them walk through that with them, they actually have a chance of having a beautiful life way earlier than somebody who's trying to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the abuse is about 1 out of 5 for the girls. And I'll have to recheck my numbers, but I think it's 1 out of 10 for the boys.
I just looked it up,
So,
actually. Yeah,
okay.
because it's a lot.
It's the likelihood of us knowing somebody who has been abused is very high. You actually know at least one person, if not many more. I was also listening to what you just said. You're absolutely right. When you have issues with even obesity, or even they just linked dementia to having been abused younger, so it triggers such a trauma response in your cells and in your nervous system that you are just more uh, like you have more chances to have dementia down the road. So it's not something that it's in your head. It literally translates in your mental health, your physical health. It's a real thing. Once again, we've come a long way. Back in the days, these were not things that people spoke about. So, and the thing is, I understand people who don't want to have their life scattered. But the thing is, in the movie we spoke about, the grandmother is not letting it go. She's pushing her to, press charges, regardless of what her mother feels. She receives help. We have to realize that as a young person, and if you don't find help right in your immediate circle, you're not going to do it most of the time. So it's really up to the parents and the family to make the right decision there. Um, and I don't see why we wouldn't. I haven't been in that position, but I don't see why you would let an aggressor in the wild, probably, perpetrating what he has been doing to your daughter to somebody else. That's also, I think, where there is a lot of accountability that needs to be held from the person who has the information and is unwilling to act upon what they know. Uh, Once again, I don't think people had this emotional maturity before. It's like a foreign language for them. Yeah. It's completely above and beyond what they have, the bravery that they have in their heart. They never had to do something that difficult. And the little that they have, they fought very hard to have it. So now losing it is sometimes greater than, yeah, losing your child altogether. But still, I would never be able to understand, ever, 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 ever. And that is going to take me to my next question. And I wanted to ask you how that shaped your approach to parenting today.
Oh, I have learned so much as a parent. um, I think so. There was this big part of me when I was younger. I didn't really want kids. And not because I didn't just want kids, but because I was so afraid of being a mom. Because
Yeah.
I think I didn't feel worthy of being a mom. I didn't have a good role model. I didn't really. Um, and so when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, um, and I found out she was a girl, I was terrified because she was a girl. Um, and I had, I remember bringing her home, and I had no idea what I was doing. I felt so lost. All I kept telling myself is, I don't want to do the same things my mom did. I don't want to have a bad relationship with her. I want to be honest with her. I want to be open with her. I want to talk to her about things. I want her to know that she can come to me and tell me anything, and I'm going to listen, and we're going to find out what's true and what's not. And my daughter and I, we have been through so much. She is such an incredible kid. Um, Her biological father, he is an addict, And so we were together for a very short period of time when she was born before we split up. And after she was born, I went through awful, awful, awful postpartum depression, which I also don't think is talked about enough.
I was going to tell you just that.
Yeah, it
I bet
is.
you went into it without knowing
Oh,
exactly what it
no
would be
idea.
or what was going on.
And it was awful. And again, like not having support, not having a mom, not having anybody to talk to about it. It got so bad that I really struggled to even leave the house. I had crazy anxiety.
Yeah.
I was like agoraphobic. I couldn't drive. And I was so afraid of anything happening to her that
Yeah.
I didn't want her to sleep in her own room. It was so, if I, this is, and when I talk to moms who are having, I always tell them, like, you're not crazy. This is normal. And it's just that we don't talk about it enough and we don't share about it enough because it's, again, that like shame part. Like you feel like you're not good enough or you're embarrassed. But that she was, thank God I did go, I saw a doctor and kind of told them what was going on. And their solution was, well, we can put you on Xanax. But her dad was an
Oh,
addict. And there was no way I could bring Xanax in the house without putting him at risk of relapsing. And so
yeah.
I I started working out. I started moving my body. And I definitely probably started working out too much, but I still am grateful that I did that because I started to get confidence and started to just, I had a friend at the time and she would go to the gym with me because I was too afraid to go by myself. But just doing those little things for myself did help a lot. And I do, I mean, I think, God, I did do that because where your mind goes in those spaces is not good. Um, but with my daughter, her dad and I, we split up before her second birthday.
Yeah.
And he relapsed within a couple of months of her second birthday. And he kind of was doing okay and then not doing okay. And
Yeah.
then by the time she was about 3 years old, he was doing so bad. Um, I helped him get into a treatment center and it was across the country. And he decided he couldn't move back to Arizona because there was too much of his past here. So he
Right.
moved to Colorado and he would see her. So she didn't see him at all for a while because he had relapsed and it was a while before he went to treatment. And then he got sober, moved to Colorado. And so he would see her every so often, but it wasn't long before he relapsed again.
Yeah.
And so explaining to your daughter, why doesn't daddy want to see me? And trying to explain to her, like, your daddy is sick. And she would say, one of my best friends at the time was a nurse. Well, why can't Aunt Ashley fix him? And trying to explain to her, like, I wish it was that easy. So it's really been her and I her whole life. Like I've had to learn how to be a mom, but also try to open the door to be her friend. But
Yeah.
it's like there's a line there because you have to still
Absolutely. Yeah.
be the mom. You can't just be her friend. But I always just told her, like, I mean, on the abuse parts, like, nobody is allowed to touch your body. And if anybody does, you tell mommy, which you hope will work. And I just
It's
have
good to have those
always,
conversations at least.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was not something anybody ever talked to me about. Um, and I have just always tried to just be real with her. I think
Yeah.
to be honest with her, like with her dad, her dad's he's not a bad man. He just has struggled with this thing. And it's devastating because you want your daughter to feel that love from a father. And I think it's been the hardest part for me is just not having a relationship with my dad. Like,
Yeah.
that feels almost like a repeat for me. Like,
Yeah.
I wish you could pick, but you can't. It's or my husband now, her stepdad, he has been the most consistent. I do feel like what she's gotten to experience with him makes me really happy. I just wish it would
That's
have been
good.
sooner.
Yeah.
But we talk about everything still. Like, she talks to me about boys and we talk through things, and some of the conversations are hard, and because I grew up as I did, I am very honest. That is one thing because of the way I was raised in the church I was raised in. My parents both had a past, like kind of crazy lifestyle, party lifestyle before they moved to the town I grew up in and started going to this church, which for them was life changing.
Yeah.
And, um, but as a kid, they were never honest about anything, any of their past things. It wasn't until so much later that I ever found anything out. And that was, I think, really unfortunate because I do believe had my dad been honest about his life and what he experienced, I do think maybe I would have reconsidered some of the decisions I made. But it
Yeah.
was coming from this person that, to my knowledge, had never done anything like, so what did he know? But had he
And
been
that's what we think
honest,
when we are children. Yeah.
yeah. And, but if they're honest with us, like, there's things that
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily tell my daughter, but at the same time, I'm like, no, this is where I was. This is where this decision led me. If I wouldn't have made this decision, it wouldn't have taken me here. And so I'm always trying to just be very real with her and
Yeah.
to listen to her and give space for where she's at, but also to encourage her. You're almost 15 years old. What matters in a 15-year-old's world? Like, boys. And if you haven't had the best dad, you search for validation.
Yep.
You want that. And so I just encourage her, like, your value is so much more. She's beautiful. Your value is so much more than just what you look like. And you deserve to be seen. You deserve to be loved
Yeah.
for who you are. And I know it feels good to have people ask for your phone number or tell you you're beautiful, but those things are only this deep. They're only skin deep.
Yeah.
They are not. And so I just try to be very real with her, very honest with her about my experiences. So hopefully she won't repeat some of the things I did. But if she is going to, that she can come to me and we can talk about it and hopefully figure out a way through it
Yeah.
instead of just pretending like something didn't happen. That I don't think works very well.
Because you are doing the best you can. Now, that's the difference between the people before and the people now. We are really doing the best we can. And it's not perfect and it will never be because we are coming from a place of trauma as well. And a lot of the response, the reactions that we have is sometimes is triggered by something else. But the truth is, as long as you want to improve, want to break the trauma, want to break the generational curse, I do know that it will reset this trauma in our DNA and it will do the same for your daughter and vice versa. And 7 generations down, we will finally be free. Like, I absolutely believe in that. And I know it comes from women too, because we spoke about men and the difference is that men do not express their emotions the same way. They have to man up, right? Don't be a pussy. Don't be this. There is a lot of pressure on them to be on top of their game and be alphas. That does not allow them to really speak about, not even understand. I think that they don't even know what's going on. But by having a mother who's opening those conversations with her son, who's telling her son where, that he's safe, that he's loved, and here's a woman, how a woman should be treated, and vice versa. I know it's just going to snowball into a beautiful improvement down the road socially. I know it. I know it's going to all come from women. And I love the fact that you have decided to not stay in a fearful space, and still allow your daughter to grow, and hold her hands when she needs it, but also give her space because she needs to learn as well. So shout out to you for that.
Thank you.
And this is literally going to take me to my next question. I wanted to ask you, what did your healing journey look like? Because it's never easy, it's never linear, it's never so. I'd love to hear the beginning to where you are right now.
Well, it has taken, oh gosh. I think there was a big part of me that used to think it was like this magical arriving, that you were going to just feel
Yeah.
everything's going to feel better. It's funny, last night I asked my husband, I said, "Do you think I'm qualified to go on this podcast? Do you think I'm qualified to speak on the things I'm speaking about?" And we kind of had like a just dialogue on that and what that actually means. And I think I very much have been this person that, because I put so much pressure on myself and I have struggled to feel like I'm enough, that I'm like, well, who am I to say anything or to share?
Right.
And I think the thing about healing is, one, healing takes a lot of accountability, because you have to, even with all of the things that happened to me, I had to look at the decisions I was making and who I was choosing to put myself around and what I was choosing to do. And I didn't do that perfectly. I picked partners that, yes, felt safe and felt, because I grew up in such chaos, I
Yeah.
picked people that were chaotic. I picked people that reiterated to me that I was worthless. One of the first relationships I got into, I was 19, and it was one of the most abusive relationships I've ever been in. And he knew some of the things that had happened to me when I was a kid. And he literally told me, nobody else is going to want you.
Oh,
Like, you are tainted. And
you're damaged goods.
that's literally what he would tell me. He would literally say those
I've
two
heard it
words:
too.
damaged goods.
They do say that.
Yep.
They
And
want to break you even more so feel like they feel empowered. They feel like you're going to stay because you have no other way out.
and he was very physically abusive. I don't know if it was on my TikTok a while ago. It was Domestic Violence Awareness Month last month, October. And I had shared some of that story. It got so bad with him that I was wetting the bed at night. I was peeing the bed as a full-grown adult, and I would lay over the spot so he didn't know. And I would wait until he got out of bed in the morning, and then I would get up. And every morning I would put toothpaste on his toothbrush, and I would make his lunch, and I would make sure to change the sheets before he came back. But I lived in such fear, and I was already broken when I met him, and he just broke me even more. And I was isolated from all of my friends and all of anybody. And I got to a place where I was struggling so bad that I sat on a curb one day, and I was sitting there just crying, and I wanted to kill myself. I did not, there was no, he would tell me that he was going to kill me. He very much said that. And I do think, had I stayed, he probably would have. And he would tell me, there's plenty of mine shafts I know of, and nobody will ever find you. And my phone happened to ring that day from one of my friends at the time, and just said, like, "Hey, God put you on my heart. Like, are you okay?" And I just lost it. And I said, "No, I'm not okay." I'm not okay. And if it hadn't been for that phone call that day, I don't know actually what would have happened. And he go in your house and pack your stuff up, Carmella, and leave right now. And I was like, well, I can't. Yes, you can. Go inside your house. And I did that. It was the most random. I left. And what's crazy is I wrote him an apology letter and said, sorry for leaving. And I got in my car and I drove a state away and went and lived in California for a little bit and literally escaped this relationship. It's just wild to think about. But all of that, I think that was probably really started to be the beginning of me healing because I was so broken.
Yeah.
I was so, so hopeless. I've struggled with my body image my whole life. I've struggled with eating disorders, crazy body dysmorphia. And after I got out of that relationship, it was the start. I think it was this like, okay, what I don't ever want to be in that again.
Yeah.
But what that did is that relationship on top of the relationship with my parents left such an imprint. And it was within 6 months that I actually was pregnant with my daughter. I think it was about that time, maybe 8 months after that relationship. I had met her dad and he was just persistent. He was nice to me.
Yeah.
And I got pregnant very fast. And then it was, I'm going to have this baby. What do I do? How do I do it? And I was a mess. And I really struggled with God. Have looked I've looked everywhere and I have tried so many things. I've been in therapy on and off for the last almost 20 years. And I've been on meds and then I've been on more meds and then I've been off of meds. And I've been waiting for this magical moment in time where there's no more pain. But the thing is the pain doesn't go away. Those things that happen to you are there. There are things that even in my marriage, I struggle with a lot of insecurities.
Of course.
And what's interesting is people look at me and they have a story of who I am. And it's interesting to hear how other women, like when I've shared things, like they tell me, like, I would never think that you struggled with that. But I do. I get insecure. I am afraid that I'm not enough still. And I think for me, therapy was helpful. Like, I think understanding why I operate the way I operate, like understanding what OCD is and ADHD and what PTSD does to your brain, like you were talking about, like it changes the way that your body even operates, like why I live with a lot of physical pain. Understanding those things, I will say, has been so helpful because it's made me feel less crazy. Because there was definitely a time
It's not your fault.
where I look at myself and I'm like, am I crazy? Am I absolutely insane? And to understand I'm not crazy, these are things that I have to walk through and to be able to learn to navigate them. And I think for me, like the biggest part of healing, and this has been the part I've struggled with the most, is I am very much someone who doesn't want, I didn't really cry in front of anybody for years. When I would tell people my story or any part of it, I would blow through it. Like when I would go to therapy and I'd list off like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I would say it and there was parts I would almost laugh about. And the therapist would be sitting there like with tears and would say like, you are so disconnected from yourself.
Right.
But that was the only way I knew how to survive. Because if I allowed myself to feel, I'd have to deal with it. And I was so always trying to just survive. One of the most probably pivotal moments, I was seeing a lady who was a faith-based counselor, And she looked at me and she said, Carmella, have you ever given yourself permission to grieve? To grieve for the little girl that you didn't get to be? Have you ever given yourself permission to feel sad for what you lived through? And to feel sad that you were hurt in all the ways you were hurt?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until she said that I sat there and was like, well, no, why would I do that? Then I'd be feeling sorry for myself.
Right.
And she said, like, it's not feeling sorry for yourself to acknowledge that those things happened and to process them and to let, I do, being raised in the church I was raised in, it really did push me away from God. I do feel like it pushed me so far away from God. And I I did like fortune telling things. And I once did an ayahuasca ceremony and did mushrooms to try to connect with. And those things seemed to help in the moment. But where it ended up putting me, and this is just my experience, is it disconnected me further from myself. It disconnected me. And through, I am very much like, I like to read about other people's experiences. And actually, this isn't an uncommon thing that you feel like you're connecting to yourself more, but you're actually disconnecting. And because of the church I've raised in, and I had this just like aversion to God or to Christianity on any level, because what Jesus or God was just this fear-based thing. It wasn't love-based. It wasn't. And in the last few years, in the last like 7 years, so one thing we haven't talked about is I was a surrogate, but the baby I gave away was biologically my son, which people don't fully understand, but I inseminated myself with this woman's, her husband's sperm, and I had a baby and gave him up for adoption. And I had no idea how hard that was going to be. I did it because she was a client and she had had 17 miscarriages, and my heart hurt for her. And I saw an opportunity to help somebody. And so I did that. Where it put me, when you give a baby away, and I got to the hospital, he was born in 3 minutes, and it was a natural birth. And so when you're giving a baby away, if there's no complications, they will actually sometimes send you home that day. So I had him at 10:28 in the morning, and they were discharging me from the hospital at 2:30 the same day. And it very much felt like, thanks for the baby, thanks for your service.
Yeah.
But you have this body that's had this baby. And so it threw me into a crazy, crazy depression, so much anxiety. And I had my kids, I had my other kids, and I was married to my ex-husband. And he had 2 boys that I raised. So we had 4 kids at home that I was trying to show up for. And I was so hopeless and that was when I did ayahuasca, and I was trying to find this thing, and it kind of, at the time, I felt like it helped.
Yeah.
It didn't. And then there was other really hard things that happened in the next year. And when I say my whole life fell apart, my whole life fell apart. There were so many hard things that happened in our family. I lost my whole family. I got divorced. I lost my house. My salon, a girl that worked for me decided to open her own salon and took all of my employees. And she was one of my best friends. And I was left just feeling so hopeless. And I was left in this space of just crying out to God. And this is where my struggle with church is I will tell you, like, I have felt the presence of God more in my own kitchen than I ever have in a church. And I don't say that that's true for everybody. I don't know, but it really wasn't until I fully just surrendered to God. Like, I can't do this myself. And I think it's so easy. I once had a blog and I literally wrote the words, "Nobody is coming to save you." And I truly believe that. Like, I believed that it had to just be myself, that it was going to be self. And what I, for myself, have found is that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, we have to have, I believe that life is way too beautiful. And there's too many miracles to believe that there's not a God. And in the moments where I have felt so hopeless, I've turned on worship music and just prayed and just cried out to God. And I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for that. Because in the moments I felt so helpless, I felt so unworthy as a mom. Like, I shouldn't even be their mom. Like, I'm not good enough to be their mom. And there's this voice that's like, you are. Like, your kids were given to you for a reason.
Yeah.
You are good enough. It hasn't been until like I really met my husband that I've had like a healthy relationship, and he tells me, "Oh, like, you're so beautiful. You are so worthy, and you are so lovable, and you're funny." And I've had this thing, like, I've always felt like I was really annoying. I annoy everybody. So, you're not annoying. You're fun to be around. But it wasn't when I met my husband. I wrote down this list. I swore off men and was like, God, if there's a man for me, you're going to have to put him right in front of me, because I'm not looking. I'm not going on a dating website. I wrote this list of what I wanted in a man, and the only box he didn't check was he's not a millionaire. Which is okay. That was like, the wild.
I was not expecting that.
But he checked all of the other boxes, and I don't feel like I would have him if it wasn't for a God that's big enough.
Yeah.
And what God is, I think, being raised again in a church where you're taught God is to be feared. And it's so rigid, and it's so, if you don't do things, like, God is grace. And God loves you right where you are. And I think the thing I love about God is that you don't have to be perfect. Like, healing is not perfection. Healing is doing better than you did yesterday. And sometimes it's just getting through the day. It's just finding the little joys in life and being able to laugh, being able to dance in your kitchen just because it's fun. And those are things that some people get to experience all the time. But for me, those are like the biggest. Those are the things that bring me the most joy. It's just dancing in my kitchen and not being afraid of somebody being angry at me or doing the wrong thing. My kids being able to laugh. To laugh and just be kids. And I don't think the hard things stop. I've waited for the hard things to stop, and they haven't. There's been so many hard things. I don't think the hard things stop for some people. I think that, but I do believe that there is something to be learned. There's something to be shared. I have questioned God, like, God, why did you make my son the way you made him? Why can't he do the things a normal kid can do? And I've gotten angry about it. Why? Why did the things happen to me when I was a kid? Why did some of the things that have happened to my kids happen? But I think that there's nothing that can't be used for good. And I do believe it's all for a purpose. And I do believe that there's been women, I've heard their stories, and their stories have changed my life. And when we were talking about, am I qualified or not? My husband said, you have a story to tell. Share your story. There's like being qualified is sharing the things, I think. And I think we heal through it. I think that
Do.
I get to heal with you today. Like,
Yeah.
what is, and what a beautiful space. I think this is where talking about things, giving other people hope, I think there's so much healing that comes from there. And I don't think that it's an endless
Mm.
road. I think that we're always growing. I think the biggest thing is to not feel shameful in your healing, to let yourself feel, and that it's not wrong to feel sad. It's not wrong you don't always have to, don't always have to have it all together.
I wish I could give you a hug, honestly. Like a really warm hug, just so you can feel my energy right now. It's like I can't be more grateful than I am right now that you opened up so much, and sharing stories is everything. I always tell it to people. I say, hey, you go to school, you learn, and then you get the degree. And then all of that is to earn money, which is man made, which is not going to take you to salvation, which is not going to feed your spirit and your soul. It's just a master game being played here on earth. And if you don't put yourself first by reconnecting with community, by helping others, mentoring, sharing your stories, everything that happened to you was just without purpose. It's going to waste.
Yep.
And we don't want that. We want to feel empowered, and we want to empower others with what we went through. And this is what surviving is. Some people think that surviving is always looking, behind your shoulder to see if somebody is actually, running after you. And surviving is really gaining strength and coming into the world with so much more wisdom to share. So we've got to share it.
Yeah.
It has to happen.
Yep.
And it hurts because when you're chosen, it's never easy. You know what? I had like, and I sent you a lot of questions and we haven't covered everything, but I feel that we covered more somehow.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up this conversation with you, this podcast, and I want to ask you one more thing. But basically, I wanted to ask you what's next for you. And I want everybody to know that she has a TikTok and she's sharing everything on it. And I really want you to be part of her community. So I'm going to link her contact in the description down below. Make sure to connect with Carmella, please. But I want to ask you what's next for you. Also, what is the purpose of your channel and the message you share on your social media so people know how to relate to the content. I want to ask you also if you're available for public speaking, because a lot of people don't know that they can be out there, and really share their message on a bigger platform, even than a podcast, like a scene, being a panelist. I would like to ask you if this is something that you would like to do. Um, and if somebody wants to collaborate with you, how can they reach out to you?
Um, so to answer your first question, I think the purpose of what I started to share is to help other people feel less alone, because I know, and part of it is selfish because I feel alone sometimes. And I do feel like it's very hard to connect with women, especially. I think a lot of us are dealing with insecurities, and it's really scary to put yourself out there. It's scary to share things. And like we were just talking about, I do, and it might sound super spiritual, but I do feel like there's a purpose to all of the pain. And I do feel like if I can share my story, I think that life without vulnerability, without sharing, it all is for nothing. And my
Mm.
hope, and this is always my hope with my anything I share, is if it connects with one person gets something out of it, then it was worth it. If it gives one person hope and it just keeps them going one more day, then it was worth it. And I think I've waited and waited and waited to arrive at the point where I feel like I'm qualified enough. And like I was just saying, I feel like I'm tired of waiting. Now is the time to do it. And I think my hope is that it just, everything we do has a wake. And so I hope that my wake can just grow, and hopefully it inspires other women to do the same thing, to share their stories, to keep pushing, to heal, to be better moms. Yeah, I guess and my hope is for it to grow. I think I've always struggled with, what am I made for? What am I meant for?
Mm.
And as much as I love doing hair, my body is tired. And I don't feel like, I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like I'm called for more. And I
Yeah.
have struggled, like you were saying, imposter syndrome and evil. I feel like every time I've tried to do that, there's been something that's happened that's been like, see, you're not good enough. And I'm really sick of listening to that voice, because I'm like, no, no, I am good enough, just like the next person is good enough. And so my hope is that people will connect to God, that there is so much beauty in life, that no matter what you've gone through or what you've lived through, you deserve to have a beautiful life. You deserve to feel joy and to not live on eggshells. And if you are in an abusive relationship, there is hope. And it's so, I think the thing when you're in those relationships is it's so scary to even think about getting out of them,
Yeah.
because you go through the questions of, how am I going to survive? What's going to happen to my kids if you have kids and I have to split custody with this person? That is one of the scariest things. And I will just share one thing. Like, when I was going through a lot of things and looking at getting divorced, one of the things my therapist, who would kind of helped me navigate through this, she looked at me and she said, so what's your plan? Are you going to stay in this until your kid's 18? And what version of you does your kid get? Does your children get? They don't get you. They don't get to experience you. They don't get to experience the laughing and the dancing in the kitchen and the joy. They get to experience a depressed you. So as much as, and we always think we can control things, and if we're there, bad things won't happen. And the thing is, bad things happen when we're right there. And it's so scary to think about stepping out. But I think one thing I do want anybody to know, if you're in an abusive relationship, there's so many people that want to help, that you just have to reach out and people will show up for you. And I do believe that God does show the light and he shows the darkness. And I do think that the truth always comes out. If your kids are in an abusive situation with maybe their dad and you are worried about them, you can't control anything, but it will come to light. But your kids deserve you. They deserve a happy you, a free you. And I think my goal in sharing everything is all of the things we've talked about today, to bring light to sexual abuse victims and to be parents or just advocates for those people, to show up for them, to show up for yourself if that's happening to you, to say, I'm worth more and I deserve better. Public speaking, it's something that terrifies me, but yeah, I would absolutely love the opportunity to do that. Yeah, I think when I think about it, it's really scary, but it's also, today it felt scary before we got here. And I think that's part of healing too, is you have to do the things that are scary. And so I think I would love the opportunity to do that if the opportunity ever did present itself.
And how can we reach out to you?
They can reach out to me. TikTok is great. My email is linked in my TikTok. Email is probably the best way, which it's carmellaelsass1@gmail.com. And that's really kind of, I've been thinking about crossing my content over to YouTube, but I haven't done that yet. So TikTok right now is the best place.
Is the main place where they can reach out to you. I wanted to ask you one question that I usually ask, but I feel that you answered it already. So if you have, tell me I have, but I wanted to still ask it. If you could give one advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I would tell her that she's worthy of all the most beautiful things. And that in the moment she feels like she's not going to make it, she's going to make it. That she's beautiful. That she's only going to be too much for the wrong people. And she's not going to be enough for the wrong people. That the right people are going to see her value. And that it's okay to be her. It's okay to be silly. It's okay to laugh at the silly things. And it's okay to be. I think the biggest thing is, if I could tell her just one thing, it would just be that she's lovable, that she deserves to be.
Thank you, Carmela, for coming today. Thank you so very much. It was a true honor to sitting with you today and listening to your story. And I know it's going to impact a lot of women out there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and being you. I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.